Good evening. No, 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 no. Good evening. It is Black History Month. It is Black History Month. It is Black History Month. All right. Welcome to the 24th Annual UTM Civil Rights Conference. Now, so I want to start by just saying the greatest gift that we can offer to this generation is access to education. We have a responsibility to expose them to a myriad of different ideas and concepts. In order to resolve the world's greatest challenges, we must challenge their minds to think critically about what they hear and what they see. And education is something that can never, ever be taken away. This conference has and always will be and represent the community and finding ways to bring people together. At a time when our politics seem to be the most divided, this conference and these opportunities should define places where we agree and offer progressive movement forward. I hope you feel inspired tonight. I certainly do. There is much to be thankful for if we just stop for a moment and just think about our blessings. I'm thankful for this institution and the quality experience that we provide for our students. I'm thankful for the kindness and generosity of the people in this community. They embrace this campus and they cheer for our success. I'm thankful for our faculty, our staff, and alums. You care beyond your means and you give until it hurts. I'm thankful for the organizers of this program. That applause that you gave was not good enough for Professor Giles and the committee. Let me hear you give a thunderous applause. So in the Ultraverse, I'm a Marvel Comics person. In the Ultraverse, I'm more famous than Denzel, and I can sing and perform better than Usher. I know y'all saw the Super Bowl performance. If you are not feeling inspired tonight, I want to share a quote that inspires me. It comes from Denzel Washington. My alter ego twin said, "Keep working, keep striving, never give up. Fall down 7 times, get up 8. Without commitment, you'll never start. But more importantly, without consistency, you'll never finish. Ease is a greater threat to progress than hardship. So keep moving, keep growing, keep learning. See you at work." Now, if you're still not inspired, wait until you meet my adopted daughter and UTM superstar student, Miss Lauren Davis over there. She's smiling. She reminds me so much of why we do this work. She is going to introduce my fraternity brother and speaker for tonight. Now, I was going to challenge him to a step competition after this speech, but my knees are already hurting, and I know he still has the move, so we're going to pass on that. But please, let's welcome Lauren to the platform to introduce our speaker.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Lauren Davis, and I am a senior mass media and strategic communication major. When you think of journalists who are hardworking and stop at nothing to find and tell those important stories, the name Roland Martin should be on that list. Over the course of his career, Roland Martin has interviewed several U.S. presidents, top athletes, and A-list Hollywood entertainers. He has written several of his own books and been a contributor to many other publications. Martin is the host and managing editor of Roland Martin Unfiltered, the first daily talk show focusing on news, political analysis, entertainment, sports, and culture from an African American's perspective. Martin is the host and managing editor of Roland Martin Unfiltered, the first daily online show focusing on news, political analysis, entertainment, and sports, and culture from an African American's perspective. Before capturing the minds and clicks of the vast online audience, Martin was a senior analyst for the nationally syndicated radio program, The Tom Jordan Morning Show. For more than a decade, Martin has worked as a news contributor at CNN, appearing on numerous shows and earning accolades for his no-holds-barred honesty and perspective on various issues. In 2009, Martin received a Peabody Award for his 2008 election coverage, naming Martin and his CNN colleagues the best political team on television. He has also worked at TV One and played an integral role in helping build the Black-owned cable network. He was the host and managing editor of News One Now, the first daily morning news television show in history targeting African Americans. Roland Martin has appeared on a variety of American networks, as well as media outlets in Canada, Colombia, Italy, Australia, and South Africa. Martin has been recognized for his work as a journalist in TV, radio, print, and online platforms. A few of his honors include an NAACP Image Award 4 times, Journalist of the Year, and a President's Award from the National Association of Black Journalists, and being named 4 times by Ebony as one of the 150 most influential African Americans in the United States. He is a life member of the National Association of Black Journalists and Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Join me in giving our guest tonight, Mr. Roland Martin, a big Skyhawk welcome.
Cool. Appreciate it. Let's see.
His session tonight will be co-moderated by Professor Henry Giles and Dr. Danny Purtle.
Why y'all standing up in the back? All these open seats. Y'all sit down.
That's what we talking about.
Everybody, all y'all, all over here, y'all trying to tip out early? Y'all got lots of seats. Ain't no, y'all don't have to be standing up in the back trying to escape. Y'all on top. Y'all really like being by yourself, huh? How you doing? Oh, she like, listen, I got 3 kids. I am not bringing any noisy kids down here. I see the look on your face. You like, She like, there you go. Yeah, you getting damn red and white shoes on. Y'all, he came in here with this loud red coat, looking like Santa Claus, and these red and white shoes. I said, you come in here dressed like a Kappa. Come on,
okay,
now.
Here we go.
Yes, yeah. You did right, because we live streaming on my platform right now. I will be talking about you and them red and white shoes.
I had to do right by Brother Roland.
You ain't lying. I was gonna talk about you like a dog. I'm just letting you know.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's go.
Welcome to UT Martin.
All right, glad to be here.
Yes.
Way the hell out here. Man, I pull a GPS up. I was like, damn. I'm kidding. I'm from Texas, so 2 hours and 40 minutes, that ain't nothing.
We're worth it.
2 hours and 40 minutes. Okay.
We're well worth it. We're glad you're here.
Y'all good? All right. How many students here y'all made to be here? Y'all have the right to take some notes on this whole thing. I saw some of y'all got their laptops open.
Where your extra credit folks at? Raise your hand.
Extra credit people. Where you at?
There you go. That's
okay.
Right.
I'm just checking. All right. Okay.
So what is going on in your world today? We know that you have your finger on the pulse of everything that's happening. What is it that is, or maybe something that kept you awake last night?
Well, ain't nothing kept me awake. Actually, I didn't go to sleep last night. I spoke in Columbus, Ohio last night, and I was literally talking with the organizer of this. So the brother in Columbus, he's doing a Black Dad Girl Week. So there was a series of events all week. And so, matter of fact, we were talking about 6 hours at a 5 a.m. pickup. And I looked up, I was like, man, my car here. So we were talking about just a multitude of issues. The thing that when I look at where we are right now, in the introduction, Chancellor talked about how is this the most divided? People, we often use that phrase. People talk about how this is the most divided point in history. That's not even close. And I think part of the thing that bothers me the most is that we have a lot of folk today who have absolutely no understanding of American history. And that's partly because what we teach is an absolute joke. So just the other day on my show, I played a clip from the mercenary Eric Prince, founder of Blackwater. And in the piece, he's talking in this interview, he's talking about how these Latin American countries, these folks who are coming here as migrants, these African nations, how all of these nations, they've got awful leadership, they're corrupt, and how we need to recolonize those countries. Now, the reason it was laughable listening to him, because he's reciting problems in these countries. And he's saying because they can't get their act together, we need to recolonize them. But what he wouldn't acknowledge is that the reason these countries have problems is because we colonized them. So he mentions most African nations. And I'm sitting here going, clearly, Eric, you've never bothered to read Stephen Kinzer's book, Overthrow, the 13, which Kinzer lays out, the 13 direct times the United States overthrew other governments. When you hear the phrase banana republic, that phrase comes from the campaigns that we funded to overthrow countries primarily because of banana plantation owners. And Kinzer's book details all of this. When we talk about he was talking about what's happening with the Congo. So you can't talk about what's happening with the Congo today and ignore the role the United States played in killing Patrice Lumumba 2 months after they got their freedom from Belgium. We talk about even today what's happening in Iran, and we have this, for some reason in this country, we only think about Iran in 1979 when they took over our U.S. embassy for 444 days. But we completely ignored 1953 when we overthrew Mossadegh, who was ticked off that British Iranian oil, now known as BP, was taking 93% of all the oil profits from their country. And we overthrew that government. We installed the Shah of Iran. So if you were 18 years old in 1953, and then all of a sudden you're in your 40s in 1979, you might have a different perspective of why they were a little pissed. And that's part of the problem. There are too many Americans who walk around today who really believe that we are this wonderful, pristine country who has always done things the right way for the most honorable reasons, when in fact, if you look at what took place in Chile, ITT, again, Kinzer lays this out, ITT was one of the first multinational companies. ITT goes to the CIA and says, hey, we'll pay for the overthrow. They're like, nah, we good. But then they came back later. Allende becomes leader. Allende is tired of the resources of that country benefiting foreign countries. He then says, we're going to nationalize the companies. We literally overthrew Allende in Chile, put in Pinochet and all of his thugs in the killing that he did. And so then we wonder why countries feel the way that they do. And so the problem I have is, Paul Harvey used to say, now the rest of the story. And so the fundamental problem that we have in this country is we walk around with blinders on, believing in apple pie, everything is wonderful, and we are the perfect, most important nation that God has completely blessed, as if we can ignore all of the other stuff that we've done in the interest of American national security or in American interest. And oftentimes those American interests are economic. And we just have to just be honest about that. And unfortunately, we're not. And so when we talk about what's happening right now, when I wrote my book, White Fear, how the Browning of America is making white folks lose their minds, folks they said, you had to be the one who came up with that title. I was like, sure did. And because we talk about history, when we talk about what we're seeing today, people need to understand in American history, every period where there has been Black success, it has always been followed by white backlash. Every period. You go from 248 years of the Civil War to 10 to 12 years of Reconstruction. Then you have a contested election in 1876. Then you have in the South, there were 3 federal troops remaining in 3 Southern capitals. They say, hey, we're going to leave, this was the phrase, we're going to leave the darkies alone if y'all go ahead and remove the federal troops. The moment the federal troops, the Great Compromise of 1877, the moment those federal troops were removed from those 3 Southern capitals, Jim Crow was instated, and we had 92 years of Jim Crow. That took place. When you look at Tulsa, when you look at a lot of the lynchings, we have this assumption that lynchings took place in this country because, oh, some Black man whistled at a white woman. No, a lot of those lynchings were economic. There were whites in this country who were literally angry that Black folks who were being downtrodden and beaten still were able to succeed financially. You get the Tulsa race riot of 1921 that wasn't taught in Oklahoma schools until 2018. You literally had the massive destruction of an entire Black community, and the state of Oklahoma did everything it could to completely ignore that it actually happened. And the city of Tulsa and the state of Oklahoma to this day won't even pay $1 in reparations for what happened there. And you have 2 now. The brother, he just passed away, Uncle Red. But there are 2 survivors left, one 109, one 108, the last 2 survivors of the Tulsa race riot. And so then when you go through the 1930s and 40s and 50s, and you go through 13 years of the Black freedom movement that, let's say, ends with King's assassination in 1968, what do you immediately have after that? White backlash when it comes to busing, when it comes to integration. Then you have this election of Black mayors in 1970s, Coleman Young in Detroit, Marion Barry in DC, Maynard Jackson in Atlanta. And what do you have in 1980 with the election of Ronald Reagan? White backlash of those policies. When you have Obama elected 2009, I love when Nikki Haley being completely delusional by going, oh yeah, Obama's the reason why it happened. It's like, really, Nikki? When a poll was taken in 2009, I discussed it in my book, and the question was asked, are you optimistic about the future of America for your children? Every ethnic group, Black, Latino, Asian, Native American, a majority of the people responded, said yes. Only one group was less than a majority, white Americans. In 2016, a survey was taken. The question was asked, are you optimistic about the future of America economically for the next 10 years? Black people, lowest wealth, highest optimism. Latinos, second lowest wealth, second highest optimism. White Americans, highest wealth, lowest optimism. So you now have to be deeper than mustard on the hot dog and now ask the question, oh, wait a minute, hold up. Why is a majority of white Americans not optimistic about the future of America for your children, for our children? Because we can't ignore the reality that by 2043, whites in this country are going to be in the minority. Now, at 47%, so it's not like, oh my goodness, so you got to put all the Black people together, Latinos, Asian, Native Americans together to get to 53%. These are undeniable. Now, folks will sit here and say, and I know folks say, well, you know, I just think he's making generalizations. Really? You can pull data for the 1980-84 elections and from 2016 and talk to white voters in places in Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and in many of these surveys. And they talked about, oh, we think too much is being done for people of color. You have polling data right now where white Americans in the polls say, we believe that racism against whites is as big or even more than it is against Blacks. Really? So we have to understand this here. And when we hear phrases, I love this when people go, that's identity politics. I'm gonna ask y'all a question. How many times have y'all seen stories that says the mayor or the governor or the president met with a group of black pastors? Any of y'all, just raise your hand if you heard that phrase. Got it, right. Have you ever seen a story that says the governor met with a group of white pastors? You ain't never seen it, have you? Because the reality is that this nation was established through whiteness. It's a fact. I accept facts. I am a man. This nation was established for white males. I love it when people say, hey, the founders, they really believed in women. So when they said all men are created equal, what, they just dropped the W and the E by accident? So we have to stop walking around with blinders and now begin to understand that if you ever want to look at, I'll just give you an example. So who's ever had a house built ground up? Okay. Anybody who's had a house built ground up, the most important thing in building a house is the foundation. You could have the most beautiful, gorgeous, well-designed, I mean, it could be furnished like crazy. Have a jacked up foundation. You're going to see cracks in the wall. You're going to see you may literally have to tear the house down because the foundation is jacked up. So we have to acknowledge literally the foundation of a country and how it was created to now then begin to say, how do we now begin to fix and repair in terms of where we are? And we struggle with that because we want to live in denial as if, oh, no, these things don't happen. Oh, then you hear, well, it happened so long ago. Okay, really? Interesting. It happened so long ago. This year, we celebrate the 90th anniversary of a federal housing act that literally expanded housing opportunities in the country. Here's what you're not going to hear mainstream media talked out. In that housing law, they put racism in the bill. In the law, they allowed folk to get FHA loans, and they did not have to loan to black people. So when we're having a wealth conversation today, most Americans build wealth through housing. You literally had in this country, by decree of the federal government, this group, you do not have to lend to them. They can't live in these neighborhoods. They can't buy these homes. And I'm gonna use Nikki Haley as an example. When her Indian American family bought a house, the owner said, you can't have black people over. You can't have parties. And when you sell the house, you got to sell it back to me. Now, I ain't never heard anything like that in my life. So today, my parents are 76 years old. Dad will be 77 in April. Mom's 77 in November. My parents are a byproduct of the racist federal housing laws. So for someone to say, well, that slavery stuff is so long ago, true, but there was a slavery without shackles after slavery that lasted 92 years. And we walk around as if that the Great Compromise of 1877 did not usher in 92 years of Jim Crow that impacted significant parts of our society, and it was written into the law. People had covenants saying you cannot sell to somebody black. And so what bothers me is, my God, we have smart, educated people who don't read. And then they go, well, I don't understand why we're having this with public policy. What? Did you not read the last? And that's the problem. That's probably the greatest thing that drives me crazy. We want to live in denial about our history. And two things can be true. You can say we're great and it's been wonderful and capitalism and all those things, but you cannot deny the effects of that on a whole group of people. And that's probably the greatest thing that just ticks me off.
I don't even know if I have a question
I
after
know,
all
it's
that.
like we really could just go sit.
I mean,
So
seriously.
just go ahead and put the little list up and just ask your questions.
So, as you all can see, this is And what he has shared with us is why knowing history and allowing history to be taught is so critically important. And not just for certain groups, but we see how impactful not knowing about what has happened in the past can impact what's going on now. So with that being said, Brother Martin, I know that there's some people in here right now who are real uncomfortable.
Well, let me be real clear. If you wanted somebody to be make you comfortable, today's my wife's birthday, 57 years old. Y'all should have called her.
Happy birthday.
She's a minister. She could have prayed with y'all. She could have held hands. She could have laid hands on you. God has given her this wonderful spirit of comfort. God gave me a spirit of discomfort. I need y'all to understand something. My mama got 7 brothers and sisters. The 8 of them had 39 kids, 70 plus grandkids, and 100 plus great grandkids. I don't need friends. I never.
It's okay, you clap. It's
I
all right.
never. Yeah. I mean, let me be real clear. I never spent the night at a non-family member's house. No, straight up, I didn't. We didn't have no room for friends. We didn't. It was. Listen, we live 8 blocks from my grandparents. The Catholic church I was born in, it was founded in my grandparents' living room. So in the church was 3 blocks from their house. So I don't need friends. And yes, I make folk uncomfortable because I'm not interested in continuing what we've always done. And somebody may be thinking, oh yeah, that's right. And I'm trying right now. I guarantee somebody white saying, man, he making white people. No, I make black people uncomfortable. Let's be real clear. I make all kind of folk uncomfortable. I've given speeches to my fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha, and I made some brothers uncomfortable, and I don't care because I think the point of discomfort, it removes you from your comfortable position. I call it whenever I would be kicking somebody's butt on television, I would say, oh, I got them butt dancing. Now, y'all know what butt dancing is. When somebody says something uncomfortable, this is what it looks like. Like, dang, why he had to go there? So they start moving in the seat. So I call that butt dancing. So whenever I was just killing somebody on television, I see them moving that seat. I'm like, yeah, I got your behind now. And we have to understand, we cannot just be operating and sitting in our comfortable positions. We have to be willing to challenge status quo, challenge groupthink, and really force people to stop this fake, silly, oh my God, it's wonderful. A few years ago, I gave the MLK speech in Wilmington, Delaware, and they had like all these students on stage, these high school students, and all the parents were there, and they had the MLK essays, and it was all this stuff, and it was all cute. We are the world, we all get along, everybody great. And I was on stage. You understand, my grandfather had multiple spiritual gifts, and for me, discernment and prophetic are 2 of mine. And I'm sitting here going, I'm like, everybody in this room lying. I said, they lying. So all the students were on the stage, and they were talking about just how wonderful things are at their school, and they get along. And I was like, really? I said, let me ask y'all a question. I said, who do you go to lunch with? And she's like, oh, what do you mean? I said, who do you go to lunch with? So I started hitting them with, and I said, and what began to reveal is, I said, let me explain something to y'all. Schools are involuntary, to some degree, involuntary scenarios. So the reality is, you don't really have control over if he or she comes in to this space. I said, but who you eat with is voluntary. And what I began to break down, most of the white students ate lunch with white students. And most of the black students ate lunch with black students. Most Latino students ate lunch with black students. And so after I obliterated all that kumbaya crap, I said, I'm not going to hold all of y'all accountable. So then I turned to the audience. I said, it's your parents' damn fault. Now all the parents are like, how did this become about us? And I then turned to the parents and I said, who do you invite to your dinner table? And so now when you start forcing yourself to answer that question, you then now have to say, what church do you go to? What does the church look like? And so now all of a sudden people start going, man, why you had to go there? Because we have to understand, for all of this hype that we love talking about, the fact of the matter is we operate like tribes. Men and men, women and women. I never understand about sister, her father-in-law. They were very old school. So I remember we at their house and we're sitting, and again, for us, we all around each other, kids, adults. I mean, we all mixed in my grandpa's house. So we sitting in the living room, and I'm like, why in the hell is only dudes in here? So his son comes in with his wife. Son, come on in. And he says to her, he said, now the women are in the kitchen in the living room. And I was like, oh, hell, I got to get out of here. So again, I am cognizant of when I'm in all male situations, all black male situations. And we have to acknowledge the reality of who do we actually spend time with? How do we actually get to know other people from other cultures? And is it real, or are we walking around really lying to each other about how diverse we are with the folk who are in our world? And when you just own up to it, now you can begin to ask, now you begin to change things. But as long as you're walking around with rose-colored glasses, it's going to be a problem. And that is what is bothersome. And so, yeah, I'm going to make people uncomfortable with that. And if you got a problem with it, like what my man say, it ain't my fault.
So Roland Martin's critics, who are they?
I don't care. I literally don't give a damn about anybody. No, when I say I don't care, I don't care. I don't. Somebody gonna run their mouth. Here's what I say to anybody. If you want to come at me, we're gonna have a factual conversation. See, the problem that we're living in a world of emotions and not fact. Kellyanne Conway talked about alternative facts. Ain't no alternative facts. If you touch that hot ass stove, guess what you're gonna say? Ouch! Damn, that's hot. Nobody's gonna say, well, no, actually, I think it's lukewarm. No, it's hot. But we sit here, and when we have these discussions, we don't want to sit here and deal with it. I had guys hit me, and they were like, man, why is it when your show you keep interrupting people? Because they started lying. They were like, well, you won't let them finish their thought because they were lying. Understand how I think. If we're sitting here and if you said something that's factually incorrect, I can't let you keep talking. Because the audience goes, well, she said it. Did nobody say nothing? That must be true. And so we allow lies to be told in our presence, and folk just make stuff up. Somebody got mad at me. So Texas A&M played. Texas A&M played South Carolina in football, and luckily we're not at UT Knoxville because I spoke there last month, and I said I'm gonna come back when we beat the Volunteers. And so my Aggies beat them in basketball last week. So yeah, we're lucky we're not in Knoxville, but they'll get over it. So so when Rick Perry was the governor of Texas, he decided we need a trophy, some kind of trophy. So they create a trophy. They create a trophy. They create a trophy for who's calling me? Stop calling me. They created a trophy for the winner. So I'm watching the ESPN broadcast, and they're talking about this trophy. They're like, where's this trophy? Who is it? So they were on the air trying to figure out who has it, who holds onto it. Then he found a photo of the trophy. So I'm sitting here watching the broadcast. And so they're like, so the trophy is named after a South Carolinian who went to Texas and joined them and fought at the Alamo. I'm watching the broadcast. And so the Aggies win, they get to keep the trophy for a year. So I get my phone and I say, they can keep that trash ass trophy. Folks, and so I actually text one of the broadcasters. He was like, what? I said, if I'm a black player at Texas A&M, ain't no way in hell I'm going to hoist that trophy. Why? Because the South Carolinian who joined the Texans at the Alamo, and we have created this fake, remember the Alamo. Did nobody ask, what were they fighting at the Alamo? They were fighting the Mexicans to keep slavery. That's the history. The Alamo, they were angry that Mexico was outlawing slavery, and they were fighting Mexico to keep them from outlawing slavery. Why in the hell am I going to hoist the trophy of a dude from South Carolina who wanted to keep my black ass enslaved? That's how crazy this is. But what we do is we go, oh no, but the Alamo it was for Texas independence, for white people, not black people. Now, Gerald Horne has an amazing book about the Texas independence and the battle for soul of this country. And that's a perfect example that we walk around all the time talking about this event and that event, and we never ask, what was the basis of the event? What were they actually fighting? What were they fighting for? The Alamo was literally, they were fighting. They lost the Alamo. The Mexican general did not pull his troops back. They lost at the Battle of San Jacinto. That's how Texas declared its independence from Mexico, and that's how they were able to establish Texas as their own country, because they were hell-bent on maintaining slavery. Why would I, as a Texas A&M graduate, be happy with a trophy for a Confederate? I'm sorry, that dog ain't gonna hunt. But that's the problem. Oh, I'm sorry, my bad. I actually read. And that's the struggle that I have. These things keep happening, and we don't even ask the question, what are we celebrating and why? I still don't understand how, even in this state, you have folk who are fighting for Confederate monuments. Well, that's our history. No, they lost. They lost. They lost. I'm just confused. I'm still laughing by all the people who are mad that lift every voice. Again, this is just stupid. And y'all don't have to raise your hand. But if you disagree with lift every voice, I saw all these MAGA people, oh, silly Megyn Kelly and all of them, whining and complaining on Twitter that the Lift Every Voice and Sing was sung at the Super Bowl. And they're like, we have one anthem. There should not be two anthems. First of all, I'm like, you idiots. Lift Every Voice and Sing was written as a celebration of Lincoln's birthday. You would think Republicans would know that. It was written, it is a Christian hymn. They mad about Jesus being at the Super Bowl. And this other group spent $21 million on Jesus ads, which I'm still confused by, that you're going to spend $21 million on some ads at the Super Bowl, but Jesus talked more about the poor than anything else. But I digress. So then the Star Spangled Banner wasn't even adopted as the national anthem until 1931. Lift Every Voice and Sing was before that. But I'm like, you're mad at a song because the NAACP called it the Black National Anthem. That's not what the writer called it, the author of the song. And we get in these battles, and I just sit here and go, these people can't even read. It was literally a celebration. The song was written to celebrate the birth of Lincoln. And Republicans are mad that it was sung. But they call themselves the Party of Lincoln. You can't make this stuff up.
Why are we so attracted to the nonsense, all the noise and the craziness out there that people are just so inclined to believe? What is that attraction?
Well, because we really don't like the hardcore truth. Because hardcore truth makes you uncomfortable. I mean, it does. Let's just take out politics, take all this sort of stuff. If a wife says some hardcore true stuff to her husband, he ain't happy. And a husband is not trying to say some hardcore stuff to his wife. Mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, friends, frat brothers, sorority sisters, whatever. We really don't want to deal with our stuff. We would really prefer just to go along, have parties, drink, enjoy ourselves, and just paper over any problems that we have. And so what then begins to happen is people then get locked into their ideology. And right now, I am really confused that the party of Reagan is loving Putin. I'm right now. I'm just like, I don't know what the heck is going on. And it's just so the struggle is we have people today who, one, don't even really understand how things have changed. So, like, I'll just give you a perfect example. It's a lot of broke white people in Tennessee, in rural Tennessee, who literally vote against their own economic interests. Yet, if you look at history, and again, you could try to fact check me, knock yourself out, you about to be in for a rude awakening. At every juncture in American history, when Black people fought for rights, the quality of life for poor white people increased. First of all, taxpayer-funded education in the South did not exist before Reconstruction. You can thank Black people for that. Freed slaves of African descent were elected to the legislature in South Carolina. They represented a majority of the legislature. They passed laws requiring state-funded public education in the South. That thing went from South Carolina to North Carolina to Tennessee to Georgia to Florida. It went all across the South. That's an undeniable fact. When the Great Compromise of 1877 came and they ran all the Black people out and overturned a whole bunch of laws, guess which law they did not overturn? Taxpayer-funded education. So you then go look at in North Carolina, where poor whites were aligning with freed slaves and were like, we in this thing together. Yeah, because broke is broke. White broke and Black broke. It is. If you live in a rural part of the state, in the country, you got no little access to broadband, poor schools, poor health. Reverend William Barber told me he was at a parade in North Carolina. He said, and a redneck came up to him with a Confederate flag around his shoulders and tears in his eyes, said, Reverend Barber, you and I don't agree on a whole lot of stuff, but I got to thank you for fighting to keep our rural hospitals open in North Carolina, because the Republicans didn't want to do Medicaid expansion. The first person to die in North Carolina with the closure of rural hospitals was a middle-aged white woman who had to be evacuated some 65 miles to the nearest hospital. And so when they were doing Moral Mondays in North Carolina, it started off as a Black thing. Then all of a sudden, as the thing kept happening every Monday, then all of a sudden, white school teachers and white police officers and white firefighters, and they start going, well, dang, man, the thing they talking about, that's us. When I spoke to the state conference of the NAACP, it was a group of 6 white women I met. They said, I bet you ain't never met 6 white women from the hills of North Carolina who founded the NAACP chapter. I cracked up laughing. They were so hilarious to me. What they said, we realized everything the NAACP was fighting for, we literally didn't have. And so when you all of a sudden begin, and so if you go back and read or listen to Dr. King's speech in Montgomery after the settlement to Montgomery March, he talks about a particular book, and he talks about in that particular book how they call it the bourbon class, plantation owners, were angered and were scared to death because poor whites were aligning with freed slaves. And he said they then had to create something to drive a wedge between this alliance. And it was a successful alliance. It was happening in North Carolina with elections back and forth. And so what then happened was, he said, they then took Jim Crow. He said, use media. It's there in King's speech. Use media to speak, to drive this issue. He said, so all of a sudden, you then had poor whites who were fighting freed slaves and not realizing before that they were sitting here on the same side. When you talk about what's happening now with Medicaid expansion, when you talk about Medicare, where you're now paying $35 a month for seniors for insulin, guess what? 18% of the people on Medicare are Black. That ain't impacting us. When we talk about welfare in this country, because of media, the oppression of welfare, if you mention welfare, you will automatically think somebody Black. When the reality is, when welfare was created, Black people couldn't even get it. It was established for poor white women. That's just a fact. So when you start going through all of these things, these so-called entitlements, what none of them meant for Black people. But it now is, oh no, we can't do that. And then we start talking about what are entitlements. Like when Trump was in the Oval Office, because I can't even say president, when he was in the Oval Office, when we had the fight with China, it was amazing. Oh yeah, we're gonna make China pay for tariffs. That's not how tariffs work. Tariffs work where you actually pay more for the goods. China ain't paying for nothing. So we had a fight with China over tariffs that bankrupted a whole bunch of white farmers in Illinois, Iowa, Wisconsin, and we dropped 25 to 30 billion dollars. Oh, I'm sorry to call subsidies. That ain't welfare. That's subsidies. 25 to 30 billion dollars for a creation of a program that he created, the fight over tariffs. And I never forget, I saw this one story, and this one guy, he said, I lost my family farm because of this. I still support Trump. I said, he done lost his damn mind. They were going bankrupt. But again, you step back, and let me, follow me here. This is not a Republican or a Democrat thing. It is literally a quality of life thing. For me, if you are living in a part of Tennessee and your education is awful and you don't have access to quality foods, how could you vote for somebody who won't enroll you in the federal food program? How can you call yourself a Christian?
You can't talk about the Bible.
I can. How can you call yourself a Christian and Christianity goes beyond abortion? How can you call yourself a Christian, but you will support somebody who's against a food program? So which pro-life are you? That's why I said be pro-life from the womb to the tomb, not just in the womb. But so we have to begin to challenge people. So when you ask about the ideology, we have to challenge them on that particular point and then say, what do you actually care about? Because if you care about health and education and economic mobility, I was just reading the Republican legislature in this state passed a bill that's going to benefit 80 corporations, and they don't have to name them. How is it that people in this state are not in an uproar of who do you represent, corporate interests or the people? How is there a mass shooting in this state? And the first bill is to shield the gun manufacturer. Oh, I'm sorry, but you pro-life. Oh, my bad, you the party of family values. But what about those families? And how can you have people, mothers, white mothers, sitting in meetings, holding up signs, and you banning them from holding up the sign, but you love the Second Amendment, but you skip right over the first? That's what I'm talking about, how we have to challenge people on forget your party. Do you have morals, values, ethics, and principles? And when you do that, you're forcing them to have to deal with these tough questions. And a lot of folk don't want to deal with it because they're sort of stuck in that just political, no, I'm just right or I'm just left. No, no, no. How do you care about people?
How is it
It's real uncomfortable in here.
we have a candidate who has a history of losses in the courts, who has engaged in behavior that is immoral, unethical, and illegal, and has still risen to the level of being the preferred candidate of a particular party?
I'll give you a perfect example that I am just, is befuddling. This dude has stiffed thousands of business owners. Like literally, they did the work, I ain't paying. I dropped a video the other day of a guy who did something at one of Trump's hotels, never paid. The guy ended up committing suicide. He had to sue. And you sit there and go, so I'm sitting there looking at all these people. Oh, he's a fantastic businessman. He won't even pay these people who did the work, who are just small business owners, who thought they had a great contract. And really, man, what this thing is there are people in this country, and he's one of them, who love dictators. And what he's doing is he's playing these folk for a fool. Listen, do you understand? I've had conversations with Republicans in Congress. They hate him. They think he is an idiot. They say Lindsey Graham don't believe nothing he says. That's not, I'm telling y'all right now, that is not what Lindsey said privately. That is not what Giuliani says privately. They cannot stand this dude. But he has a hold on a segment of Republicans, and they will retaliate. You know it's bad when the judge in the last case, and it's about 100 of them, you've never seen this outside of a mob trial, when the judge kept the names of the jurors private. And the judge, when the trial was over, the judge warned them, I would advise you not to tell anybody you were on this jury, because he knows what is going to follow. When he started attacking Nikki Haley, that's when she requested Secret Service, because the death threats became fast and furious. And so it speaks to a group of people who are fanatical, and it is a cult. And the greatest problem, though, in this, the greatest problem are the people who know better, but they are so drunk with power. September 2021, when I was on ABC News, Chris Christie was on there. Chris Christie, he gave this speech at the Reagan Library, and they were all praising. I was like, I ain't praising this damn speech. And he was just in it. So we were on the air, and it was too funny too, because we were in a commercial break, and George Stephanopoulos said, we're gonna come back and talk about the speech. And then the sister, she was sitting next to George. She said, are we gonna talk about his speech? And George said, yeah. Now she was one of the paid panelists. So I'm the guest, so I ain't saying nothing. But inside I was like, ooh, please bring this speech up. I was like, please bring this speech up. And so they bring the speech up, and Christie's talking about he's feeling himself. And he's just, and then Sarah Iskor, she worked for Sessions, and she feeling it. And it is just this whole love affair. And I waited, and I waited. Y'all can go to YouTube, you'll see it. I waited. And then I pounced. I said, you are going to have to come to grips with that. You made him possible. You supported him in 2016. And I said, the fact of the matter is, you chose power over patriotism. You chose party over principles, morals, values, and ethics. And I said, you and other Republicans knew that man was evil, but you cared more about power. The true test, and even right now, when Mitt Romney is talking, I'm sitting there going, but Mitt, you sucked up to him to try to be his Secretary of State. So let me tell you how I roll if I can't stand you. And I've been in this position. Person over here, I cannot stand because they're evil. They do not exist. And when I say they don't exist, they don't exist. I remember when I say I don't exist, I don't even look at you. I was at an event, and it was 5 people at the table. And a person called me over, and I saw, and one of the people over there, I spoke to this person, this person, this person, this person, looked at this person, and walked off. See, morals, values, principles, and ethics mean that I don't care what you offer me, I cannot align myself with you. And that is what right now, Republicans in Congress, they know that border bill was one of the best bills they ever going to get. But because he told them, don't you dare touch it, because I need that to run for election, they didn't do it. They all scoured. They all ran for cover. That's not principles. So after that, you can't come to me and talk big and bad about ethics, morals, values, and principles when you showed none. And so the test for America in November is going to be, do you actually believe in this republic? Do you actually believe in democracy? Do you actually have any principles? That's why I don't care if every time Franklin Graham opens his mouth, I am going to say you are absolute trash. Because that man questioned and condemned Obama as a Christian and stands with that man ain't even remotely a Christian. When you hold the Bible upside down, now everybody know when you hold the Bible, the moment somebody say 2 Chronicles, you ain't walked past the church. But I'm telling you, I saw so many of these evangelicals because it was power, and they are choosing power. That's what they're doing. And again, this is not, oh man, I ain't never self-identified as a Democrat or Republican. But I'm gonna call this thing like I see it. That's power. When Bill Clinton got busted, Mark Lewinsky, the women in his cabinet ripped him to shreds because they said, we went out and defended you and you knew you were lying. And they ripped him. This man makes fun of dead soldiers. John Kelly, the general 4-star, he confirmed his degrading comments about America's war dead. The moment I knew when the Republican Party had lost their ever-loving mind is when that man made fun of a POW and he suffered no penalty. That's when I said, y'all can hang it up. This party is gone. Because if there's any, Republicans love some troops. They love the military. But when that man made fun of John McCain's arms. Oh, he couldn't even raise his arm. And when they gave him that pass, I said, y'all, That's why when the media goes, a new bottom, there's no such thing with that man as a bottom. It doesn't exist. His bottom is deeper than the floor of the ocean. It doesn't exist. There is no low. And what amazes me, again, is to watch people suck up to him and run behind him and Senator Tim Scott, oh, I love you. And I'm telling y'all, I know what they say privately. I know what they say privately. I've talked to many of them. They can't stand him privately, but he is a path to power. And when somebody is willing to give up morals, values, principles, and ethics for power, that's the person I'll be scared. I'll be absolutely scared to death of that person. That is a scary thought.
Scared of, it seems.
Yeah, so we just have to just be honest about in terms of where we are. So we are, I'm telling you, what the election that we're facing is not just even, I'm not talking about even just Washington, D.C. You know, how can Republicans in this state say we want to expel Representative Justin Jones? Now, I want y'all to think about this here, because he refused to lead the Pledge of Allegiance, and he said, I am offering this protest because of our failure to pass gun legislation. Again, so he's boycotting the pledge, which is the First Amendment. But then people say, that's disrespecting our troops. But that's actually what our troops fighting for. So you can't say our troops are fighting for our way of life, but you skip the First Amendment. That's literally part of the rights. But see, that's again what we do here, and it's just it's crazy. You take voting. I would think Republican, Democrat, you want everybody to vote. You ain't trying to figure out how to make it easier to vote, as opposed to no, let's make it harder to vote. And that goes to power. That goes to the demographic changes and what we're seeing, and when it's controlled. And so I am going to be absolutely adamant about fighting for civil rights and what King said on April 3rd, 1968. Be true to what you put on paper. Be true to what you put on paper. Don't sit here and tout what's on paper, and then you don't want to live by what's on paper. That, to me, is the standard that we should be operating in, regardless of party, regardless of race, regardless of gender, because that's what it has to be. And the civil rights movement, many call the Black Freedom Movement, was about making America be true to what it put on paper.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you mentioned that about civil rights, because I think with a lot of our young people here, when they hear the term civil rights, and this is a civil rights conference, they tend to think that's something that their grandparents or great grandparents had to do.
But that's not their fault. That's adults' fault. Because if you haven't properly taught, how would they know? So, for instance, if you are so here's a perfect example. Let's just go ahead and do an interactive class right here. All right. How many of you in this room have heard of Title IX? Raise your hand. Okay, got it. How many of you have learned that Title IX, that's about sports? Raise your hand. All right. Okay, now, I don't want no professors answering this question, so be quiet. Where does Title IX come from? See, y'all proving my point. Title IX is a provision of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Title IX is talked about today through the prism of sports, women being able to play sports. And so most of the discussion about Title IX, even when it had the 50th anniversary last year, it was all around sports. No. Title IX was about opening the professional schools to women. The reason, let me be real clear. And so we start looking at numbers. If you are a woman, especially if you are a white woman, and you have become an engineer, a doctor, a dentist, a lawyer in the professional schools, you should be thanking Black people in the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Because that's where Title IX was carved out of. It was a bill by Senator Ted Kennedy, and they outlawed any school that discriminated based upon gender that received federal funding were in violation of Title IX. Up until that point, most women in America, the only real job they could get was a teacher. Why do you think after 72, the numbers changed? Because they now could go to school and get professional degrees in other areas. That's because of Title IX. Now, anybody in this room disabled? Anybody in the room disabled? Anybody disabled should be thanking Black people. The 1996 American with Disabilities Act. Where does that act come from? What's the basis or the foundation of the 1996 American with Disabilities Act? The 1964 Civil Rights Act, barring discrimination based upon handicap. All right. If anyone in this room, if you are Asian, Korean, Chinese, Taiwanese, if you get to vote in your native language, you might want to thank Black people. That's the 1965 Voting Rights Act. If you are non-Black and you now get to live in the neighborhood of your choosing, you might want to thank Black people. That's the 1968 Fair Housing Act. And if you gay and you are elated you can now get married, you might want to thank Black people. That's the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause, which was one of the 3 Reconstruction Amendments, 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. So what I'm laying out is to the point of your question. The problem that we have today is that we talk about civil rights as if it is yesteryear, but the reality is you are living every single day but thanks to the very civil rights laws, and those laws are still on the books and being used today to create opportunities for individuals who were historically discriminated against. And so we have people walking around again who don't understand history. And so when I made the point, when Black folks have fought in America. So again, his perfect. If you a woman, any woman in here owns a business. No, not any woman. If you're a white woman in this room and you own a business that does contracts with the city, state, federal government, school district, raise your hand. Who is the greatest beneficiary of affirmative action in American history? White women. What is MWBE? Who knows what that means? MWBE enterprise. Minority and Women Business Enterprise. If you are a Black woman, you're under the minority category. If you're Latina, you're under the minority category. If you're Asian American woman, you're under the minority category. The W should be WW. So when you start looking at affirmative action contracts and who actually gets the majority of the contracts, it's the W category. That's white women. So when I was at Texas A&M and we had a speech communications class, we're debating this issue. I asked that same question. I said, how many of you and your mother's own businesses? And some few hands went up. I said, well, congratulations. You should be thanking Black people. I said, because your mama is an affirmative action baby. And they looked at me like, oh my God. I said, no, your mom, who's a white woman, is getting contracts through affirmative action programs. Yet you're running around opposed to affirmative action when affirmative action is paying for your college. People are so what do we have today? So the Supreme Court outlaws affirmative action in colleges and admissions. Who is speaking up? Largely black people. When Ed Bloom is attacking the Fearless Fund for giving out $10,000 to $20,000 grants to black women and women of color to start businesses, he's trying to use the 1866 Civil Rights Act against them when less than 2% of all venture capital money in America goes to black people. So it's like, oh my God, the money is just flowing, overflowing. No. And so I'm sitting here watching all of these things happen. And matter of fact, in Tennessee, it was a white woman sued the federal government's 8A program, saying this should be outlawed because she couldn't apply. First of all, she never even tried to apply. But here's the crazy part, and y'all can look it up. She was successful in business by being able to get a contract through another program for women. So this white woman sued to stop the 8A program that benefits minorities, but she was able to get contracts because she was a woman in another program. So she's like, let's stop the program for the black folks, but let's keep this one over here for the women and we good. So if you're a woman today, you should be saying, wait a minute, how have women been able to succeed between 1972 and present day in so many of these areas? It's because of programs that black people literally fought for. And who is the most silent on the attacks of these programs? The people who are the greatest beneficiaries. And so if you, a young person, has to realize that if these programs, if you see the attacks on them, that's coming back on you. And when all these women, a lot of them were white women in front of the Supreme Court with the Dobbs decision, this is the perfect example. They were all out there mad, upset. But guess what? When the black folks were protesting the lack of the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, none of those white women were out there. And I went, baby, those two things are irrelated. And so what we have, and I'm telling you, I know somebody sitting there going like, man, he keeps saying white a lot. Yes, because we have been conditioned in this country to say black, to say Hispanic, to say Latino, to say Asian, and we say voters. I love what we say, black voters, Latino voters, Asian American voters, then we go voters. I'm like, no, say white voters. When you hear working class, they ain't talking about us. In fact, when you say when they talk about rural America, they damn sure they talk about us. I love it when Fox News goes to diners. They ain't never running no black people at no diner. I know we eat breakfast. But again, I just want y'all to start looking at this stuff differently so you can understand how you're being programmed, if you will, and you're not understanding what's actually behind that. I'm gonna tell you right now, my book, straight up. A black host of a network show told me, I would love to have you on my show, but my white producers do not like your book title. I'm sorry. You don't like the title. Now, here's what's crazy. I sent the same person 5 articles. New York Times, NPR, Time, Newsweek, Axios, where they had articles literally on the thesis of my book. And I said, these articles are literally what I wrote about. And then I said, but the funniest part was, I talked about those very producers in the book. I said, the reason why we don't have these real conversations is because we have largely white executives in media who don't want to have these conversations, and they're the decision makers. I said, I'm talking about them in the book. I need us to stop being scared of talking about literally what's right in front of us. But we don't want to deal with that. We want to, again, be Pollyannish and run from the hard conversations. And so when somebody told me, they said, well, you know, but if we want to talk about this here, who? It was like when I was at CNN and we were having a conversation with Chris Brown beat Rihanna. Every discussion about domestic violence, they were all women. And I filled in for Campbell Brown and I said, I want an all male panel. And the producers were fighting me. I said, I'm sorry, am I the only one here? If the men are the ones beating women, don't you think we need to have men talking about domestic violence? I said, what? They told me I was wrong. I said, we ain't having another conversation. We had an all male panel. So if we're going to talk about race in America, I need white people talking to white people. I don't need to be in a room. I need Jane Elliott and Tim Wise and others.
Say that.
No, I'm serious, because again, we ain't gonna deal with anything until we deal with it. And there are things that are being said in rooms that I'm not in. I need somebody in the room who's white to go, what you say? And deal with folk right there. And that's, again, the struggle I think that we have, where we don't really want to challenge that, because there's a book. Get this book, y'all. Jack Bass wrote this book, and it details the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals judges who they were the ones who really made reality the Brown versus Board of Education. And it's an amazing book because it was called Unlikely Heroes. And these were white judges. And these white Southern judges, were ostracized because of their judicial rulings. So Supreme Court, remember, said separate but equal, but also for them, they said, what was the phrase? It really meant slow. And so the Supreme Court ruled, but the lower courts had to really make it a reality. So here you had these white Southern judges who were living in communities, and their friends, many of them were racist, hated black people, and they hated these judges. And one of the judges, his wife was upset because they lost friends, they got kicked out of the country club, they wouldn't have dinner with them. And he said, baby, my job is to interpret the law, not the feelings of racists. And one of the judges, his last name was Wisdom. But it's an amazing book because it detailed how these white male Southern judges were the ones who interpreted Brown versus Board of Education. And they had to deal with the personal attacks on them from their white friends because they dared to actually judge the law according to the law and not according to Jim Crow. It's an amazing book.
Let me take just a moment of personal privilege and emphasize a theme that I hope each of you, even who are here and even out in the Twitterverse or what have you, education, the importance of being well-read, the importance of attending class when you're paying money for that education. I don't know that in my 4 years here, and even in the previous years that I've taught, that I've had a better example of how important it is for you to be informed about why you think what you think, why you respond and react the way you do. And oftentimes what I have found from my experience, personally and professionally, is we make decisions based on our parents or the tribes that we're part of, rather than going out and seeking education to have a better understanding of why we do what we do and why we think what we think. So I want to re-emphasize how critically important it is for you to take advantage of the opportunity for those of you who are enrolled. And I also want to say, for those of you who are considering a university, I want you to know that when you come to the University of Tennessee at Martin, people like Professor Giles and myself and other of my colleagues are going to challenge you to be just as well read as Brother Martin.
But also,
because it's critical.
but also challenge professors.
Certainly.
I mean,
Certainly.
listen. I went told many professors. So I don't operate from the vantage point that the professor knows all. And no, I mean, trust me, it's still some professors cussing my name at Texas A&M. Like I never forget. It was an English class. It was so funny because I remember they had us reading Huck Finn, and y'all, I'm telling y'all right now, what was homeboy's name? Jim? Was it Jim or Joe? I ain't know what the hell Jim was saying. I didn't, and I went to class and I was like, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, I don't read slave." I said, "I don't know what the hell Jim's saying," and boy, she was hot with me. And then there was a story. It was a story in the class called Nigger Joe. And I was like, oh, I damn sure not reading Nigger Joe. And so I go to class and I said, I'm curious. So this book was like this thick. I said, are there anybody in this book, did anybody black write anything over this 100-year period? And so she's mad as hell at me. And so now she's looking at me, and so she asked me my name. I told her. Now her husband was an English teacher. I had him as a freshman, and I jammed his behind up too. And then she went, Roland Martin. Oh, and I was like, mm-hmm. I went, mm-hmm. Like, that's me. And she goes, well, if you have a problem with the reading selection in this class, you could go to the department head. Where's his office? She thought I was lying. I got up, went straight to his office. And I sat in front of him. He's like, well, what's the problem? I said, my problem is, how can you be teaching an American literature class and literally there are no black writers in this damn book? I said, but Nigger Joe is. I said, we got a problem. And I said, and I'm not. So what I did is I walked in. So we had a quiz every day. It was a summer class. We had a quiz every day. I walked in the class, wrote my name on the top, wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and marked it a 0 and sent it up front. I was like, we're not doing this. And there were other instances. And again, now this was in high school. So Miss Joseph was so mad at me. Oh my God. Did she throw me out? Yeah, she kicked me out of the class. She said that no president can serve more than 8 years. I said, that's a lie. And she was like, she must have said, that's just factually not true. I said, it's not true. And she was adamant. So we had a test. And I said, this is false. She marked it wrong. I'm like, I'm sorry, what are you talking about? This is not hard. I said, Kennedy gets killed in November 1963. LBJ becomes president. He serves the final year of Kennedy's term. He wins in 1968. He gets inaugurated in January 1969. 1964, 65. I said, he chooses not to run for re-election in 1968. I said, he served 4 years. He would have served another 4 years plus the year. I said, I'm sorry, 8 plus 8 is 1. I'm sorry, 4 plus 4 is 4 plus 4 plus 1 is 9. What are you talking about? She was like, going at me, and I'm sitting here like why are you fighting me on this? It's math. Like, I hated math, but I knew 4 plus 4 plus 1. And so I think in that class I had like 103 or something. Yeah, and I can be petty. And so we had a quiz, and I go, okay, again, same. So I practiced that 0 thing earlier. So I pulled a sheet of paper out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, wrote 0. I hand to, I said, what's that gonna do? Drop my grade to 101.5? I'm like, you're wrong. So what happens is, I believe a student, if you're standing on fact, I believe you must have the courage to challenge a professor on their thinking based upon the facts. And if they are offering you their opinion or their assessment, then they need to say that. But they cannot say what is an undeniable fact if it's not true. And I think a lot of people are afraid to challenge authority for fear of being kicked out, being run out, or people or ostracizing. And I just don't believe in that. I absolutely believe in challenging authority. And I've been challenging authority from elementary school.
Which that takes us back to where we started almost.
Which,
Challenging authority.
which is also based upon reading.
Yeah.
And so, look, I would read 300 books a summer. And so again, for me, it has always been a constant quest in pursuit of knowledge and truth. And I am going to push you as hard as possible on the very issues. And again, and too many people today, again, we're not pursuing truth. We're not expanding our knowledge base. We're not understanding. Like, here's a perfect example. Let me just throw this right out. Based upon the knowledge of the people in the room, who launched the Montgomery bus boycott in Montgomery in 1955? Y'all can just throw some answers out. And somebody in the back, do me a favor, pull out that book with the red on the cover in my backpack. So just throw out the Montgomery bus boycott, which we're all aware of. Rosa Parks, sit down. So who launched? Y'all don't stop being scared. Who launched Montgomery bus boycott? Yeah, go ahead.
We got a
sister.
hand in the back.
Nope. Nope.
Is that the book?
Bring that book to me. Yeah, go ahead. Martin Luther King Jr. Nope. John Lewis. Nope. Go ahead. Nope. Now, here's why I'm saying it. So what we know about Montgomery bus boycott, MLK was a spokesman, 26 years old. Appreciate it. 26 years old. And we've seen the videos of group preachers, and we've seen, okay, Rosa Parks sitting down. But the fact of the matter is, it was a group of black women who do not get credit. It was the Women's Political Council. It was also their leader, Joanne Robinson. This is her book, The Montgomery Bus Boycott and the Women Who Started It, the memoir of Joanne Gibson Robinson. Several days after the Brown versus Board of Education decision, Robinson sends a letter to the bus company, says to integrate. In her book, she details Claudette Colvin was one of the young ladies who was arrested. There was a woman who was arrested before her. There was a woman who was arrested after Colvin, who they didn't even know about. She details them in the book. We have been trained, literally, a host of black women have been wiped out of American history for their role in the Black freedom movement because it has been framed as being led by these group of black preachers and black men. That is a flat out lie. And so why is that important? Because if you don't then really begin to understand how it happened, she details with one of the arrests, the women were primed and ready to launch the boycott. The black preachers were not. So they backed off. So when Rosa Parks, so we created this whole thing. Rosa Parks sat down and everybody didn't riot. No. This had been something that had been building for quite some time. And it was the Women's Political Council in Montgomery that was the backbone of the Montgomery bus boycott. That's the kind of history that we have to constantly be in pursuit of, because if we keep passing the same story down the line of how these things happen, then we literally are writing people out of history who were the ones who actually made it happen. And that, to me, is something that I just, as a journalist, I can't abide by. That we have to absolutely be operating much differently when it comes to history and how these things happen. And when I see the battle over the 1619 project, first of all, people like Roland Bennett and others have been writing about this stuff long before Nicole Hannah-Jones. No diss on her, but folks they've been writing this stuff in Ebony for a very long time. And you have people in this country. So the problem that you have now is that we have allowed what is an accepted view of American history written by a group of people. And all of a sudden, when you now have individuals who come along with different research and different interpretations, we now say, no, y'all not legitimate. But they are, because they're willing to challenge conventional wisdom. And so that's where we have to be. We need a generation of people who are willing to challenge conventional wisdom, who are willing to challenge parents and grandparents, who are willing to challenge ideology and thinking in order to have the America that we always, again, as King said, that was supposed to be on paper that we never actually had.
I want to switch gears just quickly and ask you, we just recently lost a generational voice in Brother Joe Madison.
Yeah, good brother.
And I'd like to know, who are your heroes? Who are some individuals who inspire you and make you who you are, or who have poured into you?
Nobody outside of my family. There was nobody on TV who fed me. There was nobody, there was no celebrity who helped me with homework. There was no TV anchor who picked me up from the school bus. So I've always defined my role models, heroes, as mother, father, grandmother, grandfather. That's who I look to. Now, it doesn't mean along the way that there were people who were teachers, there were people who were instructors, there were journalists and others who I talked to, who I learned from, who I value those relationships. But those folk did not raise me. And so when I look at, it's so funny, my crew is so when the guys I work with, they got no clue how to pack. They the worst packers you ever seen in your life. Like I sit there and I'm like, how y'all can't fit all this stuff in the vehicle? And they'll sit here and they'll be like, man, look, this stuff won't fit. And I'll be like, take all that stuff out. Then I repack it. Then they're standing there like, how in the hell did he get all this stuff in this vehicle? My grandmother had a catering business. I catered beginning at 7 years old. Sometimes we had 3 weddings in one day. So we had to pack a van for sometimes with 3 weddings. You know how to use every available space. And so when I think about what I do, when I think about how I set up, how fast I can set up and how I do things, I look at going through that particular business. When I look at how I negotiate, I was on a phone call today with a Fortune 500 company. And literally how I see business and how I negotiate is based upon how I watch my grandmother, frankly, not do business the right way in terms of negotiating with people who are booking her for weddings. And so that was my formation. So first 15 years of my life, it was my mom, my dad, my grandfather, my grandmother. My grandfather died when I was 15 years old. So that formed the basis of who I am and how I think. Then also when you talk about analytical thinking, when I said I didn't go to sleep last night because I was talking to a brother who's a clinical psychologist in Columbus, and literally we were talking about 6 hours, and he was trying to understand. He's like, like where did all of this come from? Where did your view of analytical thinking in terms of how you view things and how do you begin to break politics down, stuff along those lines, and also the understanding of grassroots politics? Well, it was really because my parents were co-founders of a civic club. So they never went to college, but in our neighborhood in Clinton Park in Houston, they cared about the community. So a handful of people got together and said, we need a civic club. We want to change the condition of our community. So I saw in real time, in real life, how you come up with an idea for a trash pickup to tear down abandoned homes that became crack houses and overgrown lots. And how do you sit here, get new street lights, how you get new sidewalks and all the different things, because I literally witnessed it. We were there. We were free labor, so we had to pass the flyers out and around the neighborhood. So the meetings took place in our kitchen. The meetings took place living room. We were sitting right there. I remember testifying before the city council when I was 14 or 15. In fact, I remember when I was in the 7th or 8th grade, we had our church bazaar at our Catholic church, and one of the city councilmen came over, Eugene McCowan, and it was something happening in public policy wise, and I literally was lighting into him. And I know he was thinking, who the hell kid is this in the 7th grade? Like, why in the hell? And I was asking him questions, and he wasn't answering my questions. And I literally said, the next time you come back, I need you to have the answers to what I'm asking you. Because I understood political representation. I was a constituent. It didn't matter that I was in the 7th grade. It didn't matter that I couldn't vote. I lived in his district. You are the council member. And then I have a right to ask you these public policy questions. And so that was all because, again, what I witnessed and saw. I remember going around to the state capitol with my mom. She was one of the three co-chairs of the Metropolitan Organization, a multi-generational and multi-denomination group in Houston. And so that was my life growing up. And so when you hear me on the air, when you hear me talking about politics in a granular, ground level, is because I actually saw it, and I saw how it goes from idea to creation. And so it's not a question of, and the mistake that people make is they think you have to, like, people come to me all the time and young people say, I want to work in politics. And I go, what does that mean? They say, well, I want to work in politics. What does that mean? Working in politics doesn't mean working for a politician in DC. Working for politics, you could be working for a nonprofit in your neighborhood. Because most people just don't understand that when we talk about politics, we're talking city, county, school, state, federal. We're talking DA, judges, water district. We're talking all. A lot of us, and I firmly believe that we need to go back to this. And here in Tennessee, the Children's Defense Fund, they've been doing this at the farm that Alex Haley owned. They've been doing freedom schools. We really have to go back. We in America right now, whether you black, white, I don't care who you are, we have a bunch of people who are utterly clueless about civics. They ain't got no clue how nothing works. And so the problem with that is we're having political conversations, looking to people in DC or the state capitol in Tennessee, not realizing the issues you're actually talking about are right around the corner. And so that's the thing that it troubles me that, so what we have to have is just a different level of education. The reason I think social media, especially YouTube and others, is so important is because now the gatekeepers cannot control the information flow. Now, the flip side of that is you've got too much disinformation. So now the problem is we're flooded with information. It's a whole bunch of crazy stuff. So I remember a couple of times my mom sent our group chat something on. I said, Mama, you cannot send nothing to the group unless you ask me first. I said, what you posted is wrong. I said, Mama, don't put nothing in the group chat again unless you run that by me, because what you posted is wrong. I'm like, delete that, Mama. And so again, I mean, so those things are happening. And so, I joke about it, but again, I think that, and I'll say this to anybody who's a student, and you really have to understand when I say student, I don't mean just college student. You could be in high school, you could be in junior high in here. I need you to understand that everything that I'm talking about, how having that level of knowledge, how it could alter the course of your life in a way that you don't even quite understand. So I'm a junior in high school, and we had career day, and we didn't know it was career day. So it was a government class until two speakers came in. One was an Asian American municipal judge. It was a white guy who he had an import-export business, and he says that he was a former chair of the Texas Republican Party. All right. So they talk, blah, blah, blah. Class is totally disinterested. So now it's time for Q&A. So I'm looking around the class. I'm like, all right. So I started hitting them with some questions. I started hitting him with some policy questions. 85. Reagan is president. When he used to be chair of the Texas Republican Party, I got some questions for you. So I'm sitting here, lighting him up with questions. I know he's thinking, same with that councilman, who the hell is this little black boy over here asking me all these damn pointed questions? And so Coach Murphy asked me to escort him down to the next class, and I did. And I ended up spending really the next 3 or 4 periods with them, taking them around. So later that night, he calls my parents to say, man, you know, y'all did a great job raising y'all son. And my dad was like, yeah, like, duh. So this is 85. No, it's 86, spring 86, I graduated 87. So we go to Texas A&M, so now it's 1989. And we're trying to go to the National Association of Black Journalists Convention in New York. We broke it and broke. And we decided to send, I come up with the idea, so let's send 30, I said, let's send 30 letters to all these foundations across Texas. So we send these letters. Nope. 29 rejection letters. One day a letter comes in, and the letter was like, Roland, glad to hear from you. Glad to hear things are going well. Encloses a check for $1,000 for y'all to be able to go to this convention. Good luck. Signed, George Strait. George Strait is over the George Strait Foundation, or the Strait Family Foundation. George Strait was the white dude who was in my class. Now, we go to the convention. There, I get elected to the National Board of National Association of Black Journalists. Nearly every job that I've had in my career was a result of relationships that I established beginning in NABJ in 1989.
Say that again.
Now, here's the but here's the piece that, again, so a lot of people like to be happy about, oh my God, that was awesome. He sent y'all $1,000. I said, no, y'all missed the whole moral of the story. It wasn't the $1,000 check. It was the fact that, one, when I was in the 7th, 8th, 9th, first of all, my dad watched news all the time. My dad's a news junkie. My dad watched more news than I do. I moved to Chicago. He started watching WGN. I said, dude, I don't watch the news here. What you don't? If my dad came here, he would find whoever, a local news. I'm serious. I ain't never spent nobody who's a news junkie. I was like, bro, you watch too much news. And when he come visit me, I tell him, turn the TV off. It's too much news, bro. Stop. So, but the benefit of that was me reading the paper, all that news. I was in a position to question George Strait. So one, I had obtained and acquired the knowledge on various political issues to be able to question him. If I don't question him, I can't make an impression on him. If I don't make an impression on him, he doesn't remember me 2 years later. Now, the second part is, for any student, this is why you can't be scared to ask a question. Because you don't know who's watching. You don't know who's paying attention. So when students say nothing and never go to the mic and ask a question, then they are never giving themselves an opportunity to stand out. So I go to schools all the time, and literally communication journalism students are awful because they never ask questions. They never ask for business cards. They never communicate. Whereas for me, whether I was in high school or college, if you were a journalist, especially if you were a black journalist, but you were a journalist, if you stepped foot on that campus, you were not going to leave there without me meeting you. So there was a pursuit of knowledge and information. And what I will say, I don't care what your discipline is, I was just reading, what's my man, Dr. Neil deGrasse, when he applied to Cornell, he sent a letter to Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan invited for him to come hang out with him. And then after hanging out, come to his lab. And then he said, hey, if something happens with your trip and it gets canceled, call me and we'll come pick you up. He said, I do the exact same thing. But because Neil deGrasse, because he had the audacity to write Carl Sagan, he didn't know if he was going to respond, but he did. So the mistake that a lot of young folk make is they never take their shot because they're too scared to do it. Or I don't know what my classmates going to say. I never gave a damn about my classmates. I'm in pursuit of excellence, and I'm not going to be scared. because you don't know if you will ever get the opportunity to be able to question someone, address someone, meet someone. And if you allow them to come to your campus and walk out and you didn't even bother to say, hello, this is my name, shame on you.
I hope you all
That
are
ain't civil rights.
listening
That's just some game. All right.
I think that's a perfect segue to our Q&A section.
Okay, who got
Session.
questions?
So if you could make your way to the mic, I think that's the process we're
In the
going to
center.
use
Yes.
tonight.
In the center.
If you need assistance, then just raise your hand and we'll certainly get a mic to you. I think Dr. Parker over here, if we could.
And selling price is right. Come on down. Oh, well, you leave. I thought you had a question. I thought they had a question. There we go.
I read that 47% of Trump's supporters are Christian white women. Can you explain why Christian white women support and love an adulterer who has sex with porn stars?
Because it's not about Christianity. Howard Dean said in 2004, God gave guns. So it's not Christian values. Understand, a few years ago in Alabama, a conservative Christian governor wanted to change the tax code in Alabama. In Alabama, they were taxing the poor beginning at $4,600. They wanted to raise the threshold because they said that was too low. So he literally used Jesus in his campaign. He literally said at campaign commercial, what would Jesus do? 65% of the folk voted against it. Many of those same white conservative evangelicals voted against his tax initiative. They didn't give a damn about Jesus. They cared about their pocketbook. So we make a mistake. So whenever you see that, they're not living Christian values. They're voting on other stuff, ain't got nothing to do with Christ, nothing to do with God. And that's how, and that's why they will come up with a way. So I love this one. Well, we got to extend grace. That much grace? But they don't want to talk about what Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the German theologian who talked about cheap grace. They don't want to deal with that. But then again, Dietrich Bonhoeffer got his teaching at the Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem. So he understood the notion of grace and cheap grace.
All right, I'm an elected official in the next county over. But how do we energize?
When you say an elected official, like what? What is it?
I'm a county commissioner in
Got
the
it.
county. Right. How do we energize the young folks to get out and vote? I think if we did a survey in here to see who's registered to vote, we'd be not pleased.
Well, here's the deal. Understand numbers across the country. People 65 and older vote the most of anybody. The next highest group are 55 to 64. The next highest group are 45 to 54. As you keep going down, it actually gets smaller. When I hear millennials and Gen Z whine and complain about baby boomers, I literally say, shut the hell up. They vote. Millennials and Gen Z actually they're the largest block of potential voters. What's the operative word there? Potential. What I say to people all the time, your opinion means nothing if you don't use your power. And so what has to happen is, if I am an elected official, or if I am a grassroots organizer, or any of that, what I am going to do is I have to be able, as my man Joe Madison would say, you got to put it where the goats can get it, and you have to make people begin to understand these issues. Reagan gets re-elected in 1984, and I never forget watching all of these college Republicans just laud Reagan. I mean, they were just so excited about Reagan. And about 2 months after the election, they were all crying because Reagan cut Pell Grants. And I was like, dumbasses weren't paying attention. See, again, people, that's how folk think. So I'm just being real. when I see college Republicans hype Trump and Republicans, okay, they're going to cut your Pell Grants. Be careful who you're supporting. It happens all the time. And so I get a kick out of it, but people, again, aren't doing any levels of research. What we have to do is we have to, first, when I mentioned freedom schools, we have to completely redefine how we talk about politics in present day life. We have to be having different levels of communication with folks when they're 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. You go to the Civil Rights Museum, which used to be the Lorraine Motel. There's this wonderful placard that says, a young girl was quoted, the quote on the wall is, "All I want for my 18th birthday is a voter registration card." And so we have to walk folks through that. Most people don't connect the dots. When I hear voters, when I hear people 18 to 30, like for instance, in Texas, even with Beto O'Rourke running, 80% of all Texans 30 and under did not vote. 80. If that number was 50%, Greg Abbott loses. So we don't do a good enough job of articulating to a young voter how decisions that are being made at the county government, or the city government, or the school district, or the state, by Congress, has a direct impact on their life. So we have to do that. Anybody else? Don't be scared.
You have your hand up. Don't be shy. We see you there.
Come on.
Okay.
Don't be scared.
Diane Beard. I'm a retired educator, and I was just looking on my phone, and the U.S. House, has impeached Mayorkas, and he's the first cabinet secretary to be impeached in almost 150 years. What are your?
Sheer silliness. So let's see. So you impeach him, but you don't vote on a border bill, but then you complain about not having a border bill. That's like literally the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. And so it's all silly show. That's what it is. It's not real. And when those things happen, that's when I say to those people, it's comedy hour, it's a circus, and therefore I can't take you seriously. But then when I say to voters, make them pay at the ballot box and vote them out. When you have clowns in office and this is serious work, you get rid of clowns.
I think we have one here, and then we'll go to Dr. Lisa.
We are in Sociology 390 right now, and we're learning about
You're in
the
sociology what?
390, our social movements class.
Got it?
And we are learning about the UC Berkeley riots and social movements. And we were watching a documentary today, and the student presence was they were very energized, and they were very excited about what they were protesting and what they believed in. And I wonder, do you have any ideas on why students nowadays are not as energized about the things that we care about?
Yeah, keep in mind 1960 to 1970 has been defined as the most volatile decade of the 20th century. But what everybody forgets is what happened in the 1950s. So when you had the Korean War, before the Korean War was World War II. Before World War II was World War I. What people forget is with the Korean War actually set off a chain of events of countries seeking their freedom, especially all across the African continent. Ghana, 1957. Then you begin to see Congo and other countries. So the 60s were actually a worldwide freedom movement. So now you take civil rights, now you mix that with Vietnam War. Now all of a sudden you have you have a combustible just world going on. Remember, North Carolina A&T four freshmen launched the sit-ins at the lunch counter. Four freshmen. That thing spread like wildfire over a period of a month all across the South of what those four students did. And so you had this generation of young people who had a fervor because they did not like what was going on, and they were resisting adult power. So you had these amazing national and international events that were driving change. What you now have are lazy, bloated, self-serving individuals who only think for self, who aren't thinking communal, who aren't thinking. Again, I go back to, how do 80% of voters 30 and under in Texas not vote at all? And so I believe the test in Tennessee is going to be, are you going to see, and again, demos are demos, are you going to see white Tennesseans stand up against a supermajority in the legislature and say, y'all got to go? Are you going to see white women, mothers, still angered by that mass shooting and then drive change at the ballot box? So that requires organization and mobilization. What any student today has to understand, and this is the problem when we don't actually study movements. So if y'all are studying a movement, don't study the superficial aspects of a movement. You get to be studying the structural aspects of a movement. How were they organized? How were they mobilized? What was the infrastructure? So you can't study the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee without understanding how it was created. You can't study SNCC or CORE without studying the Nashville movement. In your class, are y'all studying the Nashville movement? How in the, okay, I'm about to really, but how? What's the class again? How can you have a class at the University of Tennessee Martin discussing social movements, and the Nashville movement is what trained John Lewis, C.T. Vivian, Diane Nash, that was Reverend Jim Lawson? How? It's 2 hours and 40 minutes away. So y'all need to go back to your class and tell your professor, how in the hell are we studying Cal Berkeley and we ain't talking about Nashville? I'm not the, hold on.
They ain't got in the syllabus part of that yet.
No. But again, though, you can't talk about stuff in other places when it's literally right here. Y'all need to go to my YouTube channel and pull up the interview that I did with Reverend. First of all, John Lewis's funeral, y'all need to go look at his eulogy at John Lewis's funeral. Forget Obama's eulogy. Everybody talks about the eulogy. Obama gave a nice eulogy. That was not the eulogy. The eulogy that was given at John Lewis's funeral was the one that was given by Dr. James Lawson. That's the one you need to go. Then when you do that, go to my YouTube channel and pull up my interview. You type in Jim Lawson or James Lawson. Because here's a man who was teaching at Vanderbilt, who was kicked out because of what he was doing. And what they did with the Nashville movement, in my interview with him, he said they spent 6 months discussing why they were meeting. Then they spent 6 months discussing what they were going to do. The problem that we have today with young people, and this is not, oh my God, here you go. It's a continuation. People today think they're so damn smart that we can have one gathering, and after a 2-hour meeting, we've already launched a Instagram page, a Twitter account, a website, and we think we've actually done something. And we haven't figured out why we even doing this thing. So we're not, so we don't, so I spend time studying the structure. So for SNCC, I want to understand, why did Ella Baker do what she did? First thing is, who the hell is Ella Baker? Read Barbara Ransby's book on Ella Baker to understand one of America's greatest organizers, who was a continuum from the progressive groups in New York through the NAACP, through SCLC, through SNCC, and through the women's movement. That was Ella Baker. And so the problem that we study speeches, not structure. If you want to sit, if you want to, again, you want to understand social movements, do me a favor. Can you bring that second book in my bag? You got to read Martin Depp's book, Operation Breadbasket, 1966, 1971. That was an economic movement. We go, oh, Reverend Leon Sullivan from Philadelphia. Sullivan told King about breadbasket. King says, we're going to adopt it. So what you know today is Rainbow Push Coalition, that was breadbasket. So the mistake that we made, this is Martin Depp's book. Martin Depp was a white pastor who was on the executive committee of Operation Breadbasket. Operation Breadbasket changed the economic condition of so many groups, because what they did was they targeted companies and forced black products on the chip. Deals they cut, they invest money in black banks. They also hire African Americans on low level and senior level as well. It was a multifaceted effort that he did. But again, what we do today is we study speeches, but not how it happened and the structure, how it was organized and how it was mobilized and what was the strategy behind it. How did they? So the mistake, because you're talking about students today, folk today want microwave results, not incremental. And one of the greatest things that Ella Baker told SNCC workers when they went to the South, Lowndes County, and went to Mississippi and Alabama, she said, first of all, take off your college clothes and put on some damn overalls, and don't go talk to those folk thinking they some dumb hicks because they smarter than you. They simply don't have college degrees. She said, ask them what they want and say, we are here to help you get what you want. We're not here to tell you what to do in order to get it. And that right there is what has to happen. And that's the mistake. So I've had the pleasure of sitting with Dorothy Cotton, T. Vivian, Jim Lowry, sitting with Bernard Lafayette, sitting with Reverend Jackson, sitting with Sam Lucy, sitting with all these people, because I want to understand, sitting with Reverend Jim Lawson. And I want to understand, how did they create the structure that kept it all together to achieve the result that did not happen because of speeches? It was an absolute organized, smart, strategic, was not easy. And then that gives the blueprint of how then to do it today. That was the greatest mistake of most groups. Understand this with the Black Lives Matter movement. The Black Lives Matter movement was the first time in American history that a black movement garnered majority support in public opinion polls. Never in American history had any movement that was involving black people, a majority of Americans supported it. Why? Why? Give me an answer. I want you to think through it. A little bit, but why? Not it. Close, but that's not it. You have a mirror in your purse? If you had a mirror, that's the answer. This was the first movement where you had masses of white, Latino, and Asian Americans standing with black folks. And that's what scared power. And that's why Black Lives Matter movement was targeted as viciously as it was. And that's why Christopher Rufo and others are attacking CRT. And that's why they're attacking DEI. And that's why they're attacking affirmative action. Because what scared the hell out of largely conservative whites in this country was the fact that you had white youth and Latino youth who said that is injustice. And that is why they were targeted. So when you're studying movements, you have to then study how were movements attacked. Why was COINTELPRO created? COINTELPRO was created by Hoover and the FBI because they said MLK was the most dangerous, not black man, the most dangerous man in America. Why? There is no coincidence that King gets killed on April. I don't care what anybody says. There's no coincidence that he is killed on April 4th, 1968. You don't know what happened on April 4th, 1967. April 4th, 1967, he gives his famous speech, Beyond Vietnam, at Riverside Church, where he comes out against the Vietnam War. Coretta Scott King said, they had no problem with Martin talking about civil rights. They killed my Martin when he started talking about the money. So you have to expand your study of movements.
Dr. Wilson. Oh, please, we don't want you to.
I'm done. Go ahead.
You had a question.
Go ahead.
Yes.
But y'all absolutely got to study Nashville movement.
My question you will probably answer very quickly. Thank you so much for accepting this invitation to be here tonight. I have thoroughly enjoyed you. My question is, would you prefer to be referred to as a black man or a man of color?
Oh, hell no. I ain't no man of color.
I told you
I'm
could
black
answer
man.
quickly.
I'm a man. I'm a black man. So let me tell you. So this is just, again, you don't understand the game. So when I interview white supremacist Richard Spencer on my show, I had a bunch of these folks who were upset with me because they were like, when he asked you what you were, you wouldn't say black man. Those are people who know nothing about debate. I call them simpletons. They stuck on stupid. See, when you're debating, when you're debating, you're studying body language, you're studying facial expressions, and you also have to understand that I already know what you're gonna say. So when I'm sitting here, I have to put you in a position to where I catch you. So when I was debating Richard Spencer, when I was sitting exposing him for his sheer stupidity, the boy did not even realize Egypt was in Africa. So when he asked the question, I knew he thought I was going to say I'm a black man, because he already had his answer to me saying I'm a black man. But then when I hit him with I'm a man, which were the exact same signs that Memphis sanitation workers wore in 1968. And then when I follow up, I am a Christian man, literally the look in his eye, he froze and he had nowhere in the hell to go. So when all these fools who are black are trying to say, oh man, you couldn't say you were black in front of him. Fool, his ass know I'm black. I know I'm black. I didn't have to say I'm black. But in that moment, I need to catch him exactly where he was. And he absolutely froze because he didn't know how to respond to that, because the response that he had was not strong enough to what I said, and I knew I had them. And that was just one of the nuances of debate. So those things happen. So when you're in the middle of a rhetorical war, there are things that are going on in that that you're doing for a reason. And so that was one of the reasons why I answered that question a different way, to completely throw him off on what his response was going to be. But I don't run. But I don't run from. See, that's what was when I mentioned when I said white preachers. When I said, see, the problem is, again, what we've done in this country, we will only reference that when it applies to someone else, and then you have people who say, "Well, I'm against identity politics." Whiteness is an identity. It is. This notion that blackness is an identity, being Latino is an identity, being Asian is an identity, being Native American is an identity, being gay is an identity, being a woman's identity. Oh, but not being white or being a white male is not an identity. That's absolutely nonsense. It is. History shows you that. History shows you the reality of whiteness. We just like to act like it doesn't exist. I call it for what it is. And unfortunately, we don't particularly like that, because we don't want to have to deal with what that means. We don't want to have to deal with, and see, so you take, again, and I hate when this happens. So this happens all the time. People go, "That's racist." What's the automatic response to "that's racist"? Huh? No. Why are y'all so scared? I'm not racist. So what then happens is you now have an argument or debate between, "You're racist. No, I'm not. You're racist. No, I'm not," without realizing, and King even wrote this in his book, "Where Do We Go From Here? KSR Community." And I don't have that in the back of the room, but I do have the book. He wrote it. He said, he writes in his book, a number of white Americans are incapable of confronting the reality of race. Because what happens is people go, "I'm not racist. I see that way." And I'm not talking conservatives. Some of the biggest folks that got a problem with race I've dealt with are liberals, because preconceived notions, assumptions. And so racist and not racist, it's a whole lot of stuff in between that. That's where most of us are. You rarely will meet somebody go, "Absolutely, I'm a racist." That percentage is so small, but people don't want. So I'll give you a perfect example. And this is one of those things that I'm telling you, people don't understand. If we're having a conversation about diversity, someone will say, "Absolutely, we want as many qualified candidates as possible." Have you ever heard them use the qualifier "qualified" with white people? No. The assumption is that if they interview, they are qualified. But we always use the qualifier. Black people do it. We don't even understand the language. If I'm assuming you want to hire qualified people, I've never met somebody say, "Damn it, I would love to hire some non-qualified people." So I automatically assume that. So we don't even understand the language that we're using and what we're saying when we do that. And so those things, they happen all the time. When you hear the phrase microaggression, when you here's one that again, a person's not going to call themselves racist, but if I'm flying, and this happens numerous times, and I've got on my Texas A&M shorts, shirt, and hat, most white folks are not looking to me and thinking, he's a graduate of Texas A&M. What I often get is, "Do you play football?" Straight up, I'm just being honest. And then I can cuss them out, or I can be polite, or I can be curt. And then, "No, I don't play football." And now they process it. Well, shit, if he don't play football, why in the hell he wearing Texas A&M stuff? And then the next one is, do you coach there? No, I don't coach at Texas A&M. Now it's like, well, damn, he don't play, he don't coach. Why his ass got on Texas A&M shirt, shorts, and a hat? You have a kid who plays there? No! Like they literally, it never enters their brain that I graduated from there. Now I want you to understand, just think, and again, that's a person who goes, I am not a racist. So how did you arrive? By look, I see white dudes all the time in Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss. I'll never go, damn, they play running back. So people are looking at me, making an assumption of body type, but really body type and race, and go, he had to play ball. It never occurs to them that I actually went there for journalism. I ain't never played football in my life. Never. And so it totally screws with them. Now, it really screws with them now, because 5 years ago, I got me a 30th anniversary gift ring as an alpha, and it's a little large. And so now they all swear this is a Super Bowl ring or something. And so now it's really the case. But I'm telling you, so that's a perfect example. And then I wrote a column about that years ago when I was at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. And man, these white folks write me, why you have to make a big deal out of it? Because damn it, don't assume I played football. Give me the credit like you will a white man and think that that's where I went to school. That's just an example that people don't want to acknowledge. And those are the things that happen in universities in corporate America. There was a sister, she sued the Virginia Veteran Affairs. She interviewed for them, credentials, amazing, you name it. But when the interview was done, a white guy on the panel, I do not like her hairstyle. Because she had cornrows. What? PhD, experience. She literally sued them, won 70 grand in back pay, won 70,000 in back pay, had to get hired. But he literally did not hire her because of her hair. The Crown Act had to be passed in California and multiple states. It failed. It passed the House. Republicans voted on it in the Senate. We have to have a law to govern black hairstyles. I see white folks with mullets. Nobody finds a mullet a problem. You can be white man with a mullet and you can get a job. But if you have locks or natural hair, you may not get hired. So then people go, well, I don't, why do you see race? How about, I thought y'all were judging on merit. And this is our reality in 2024. And so that's why I rarely ever engage in the racist, not racist, because that's the wrong conversation. I engage people on whatever the issue is, and I force them to stay on the issue of why we disagree, and not that, because when you go to that conversation, that's a no-win conversation. It's literally a no-win conversation. And so that's the challenge. And we just don't necessarily want to deal with that. We don't want to deal with it. And then we go, well, I don't know why you're being out of shape by it. Because I didn't play ball. And what now then happens is, if that's now your assumption, I now have to question, what are your assumptions in other ways? So for years, black people didn't get hired at some places because you had bosses who said, well, they never looked me in the eye. They never asked why. Because generations of black people were told in America you couldn't look white people in the eye. So if she's my mother and I grow up and I'm actually learning nonverbal skills from her, if she never looks me in the eye, I actually am learning from her. So therefore, I am naturally going to be talking to her, but looking here and looking here, looking here and looking here. I have not been conditioned to look a person in the eye and talk. That literally happened in job interviews. And they would say, well, for some reason, they won't look me in the eye. Because black people could be killed for looking at somebody white in the eye. That was literally the culture of the entire country. So we then are penalized for some stuff that we didn't create, and no one then goes, I wonder why that happened. That's the sort of thing that drives me crazy, that we don't understand and accept. My grandfather told me, it was the weirdest thing. He called me my brother, and he said, listen, he said, baby, I love y'all. Y'all ain't got to say, sir. He said, yes and no will suffice. We were like, what? Like, where did this conversation come from? And my grandfather said, I was required to say yes sir, no sir to every white person I saw. He said, baby, yes and no will suffice for y'all. He said it, and then we were like, oh, okay. But if you actually think about that, if you actually think, what was it like to be a black man and a black woman to go through this country? And we are not talking 1890. We are literally talking 1950s, 1960s, and yes, 1970s and 1980s. And you can right now go to certain places in Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, and it still applies. The notion of walking with your head down, hat down, not looking up, that was a conditioning for decades that transitioned into centuries. And I have said many times that what we desperately need in Black America and white America is a massive reprogramming. Black America and white America needs a massive reprogramming for the history that we have endured, because we don't even know how deep this goes and how all of that still resonates in our public policy and how we hire, how we allocate resources, and all of those things. We have no idea how that still works. How in this country, that great scene from Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. He was like, Pino, you hate black people, but your favorite basketball player was Magic Johnson. Your favorite singer, your favorite, and what did he say? Well, I mean, he said, Mookie, they not niggas. He was like, well, what are they? He said, well, that's not who they are. I know people sitting there going like, damn, did he just say that? And I don't use the N-word, but I'm quoting the movie. We have to understand that literally in this country, you can graduate from blackness. They're no longer black until we say so. We don't understand the depths of crossing over. Black artists, in order to be paid fair share, had to cross over. How many white artists, Pat Boone, made millions off of singing black songs? We don't, I know somebody is going, man, I don't understand what's the big, they don't understand. They don't understand. Do you realize that Django Unchained broke the mold of black, quote, black movies not being shown internationally and making money? Couples Resort, 3 white couples and a black couple. When that movie went international, the black couple was taken off of the poster. 12 Years a Slave. Chiwetel Ejiofor, who is playing the lead character of 12 Years a Slave, the poster was changed internationally. Because Hollywood said black characters in black movies don't sell overseas. Now I'm confused. They love our music in Japan and in the UK and all over the world. All of that stuff transports, but not the movies. So you're sitting here going, now, so let me explain to you what then happens economically. So-called black movie isn't taken internationally. The movie makes $80-90 million US. It does not have an opportunity to go international where it can do 150, 160, 170 million. Now that black artist does not receive the financial benefits of the movie going international. So therefore, they do not make the same amount of residuals as a white actor. So you have now just limited the ability to create wealth by that black actor because you say the movie do not go internationally. So therefore, we can't take it internationally. Y'all, that's been the last 5 years. So when we say that stuff happened long ago, we are literally witnessing today how racist assumptions are having a detrimental impact economically on black people based upon someone's belief that, oh, markets across the world are not going to accept those movies. And that's why even if you look at the phrase black movie, how is a movie with a predominantly black cast a black movie, but a movie with predominantly white cast is a movie?
Well, I think we had another question, and yeah, there we go. Yes, ma'am.
Just real quick.
Okay, and this will be our last question, so thank you.
It's kind of quick, a couple comments. I am just amazed at your intelligence. I am amazed, and I would love to know. You need to type a list of the books that you have and send it.
Way too many books. No, that's way too many. So if you go to Twitter or just go to social media and type in Roland's Book Club. Okay. So a lot of those books are books that people have had on my show, books that I've read, and there are other books that I post, but that's way too many. So just look for that hashtag, and if you see any book mention hashtag Roland's Book Club, I read it.
Okay. That was my mother, the educator. I followed in her steps. I've been teaching 23 years.
Yeah, I couldn't tell both y'all AKs. Yeah,
no,
your legacy. We got you.
I know. But I met you when you came to Memphis for Dr. King's 50th commemoration.
Yep, 2018.
Yes, and I took a picture with you. I took off work that whole day to see all the great things that were happening. I am a proud graduate of Tennessee State University, as well as Alabama A&M University. My question to you is, the Senate Government Operations Committee.
Vote to disband the board.
Yes.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Control. So here again, this shows the sheer stupidity and insanity. So the controller does a report that talks about financial issues and problems with Tennessee State. And then they spend $2 million on an audit. And the audit hasn't come back yet, but you want to get rid of the board. But you're critical of Tennessee State for financial issues, not enough dormitory space. But your ass owed them $500 million.
Right.
But the problem, so again, this is a perfect example of white Republican Tennesseans. And again, I'm saying that for a very reason. So you're penalizing Tennessee State for the last 5 years for explosive growth and not having the dormitory space to accommodate the students, but you don't fund Tennessee State like you do the University of Tennessee.
Absolutely.
So you are criticizing Tennessee State for not having the money, but you owe them $500 million, and you have underfunded Tennessee State from day one. So that's literally like blaming black people for a present day condition and ignoring what black people had to go through to even still be surviving today. That's what's going on. It's the dumbest thing in the world. And Tennessee State has only had its own independent governor since 2017. So these are the same people that won't own up to, oh, but y'all gonna give the Tennessee Titans $1 billion for a stadium.
A new one they don't need.
But you're gonna give them $1 billion, so you're gonna make the billionaire owner of the sports team, who's already a billionaire, even richer of $1 billion in taxpayer money, but you can't find Tennessee State's $500 million, but you want to blame Tennessee State for the condition they're in.
Absolutely.
That is, again, insanity. And people have to understand, and this is where protest is important, but this is also where voting matters. So I played on the show, I forgot, it was one of the previous hearings, Dr. Glenda Glover was testifying, and it was like one of the Republican white lawmakers was going, I don't understand why all of these students are enrolling at Tennessee State and not at our other institutions. At no point did he go, maybe it's our other institutions and they don't want to go there.
Right.
See, that's the other thing. They were trying to figure out, how are y'all getting all these black kids to go to Tennessee State when they can go to the other schools? Because they don't want to be at the other school because they may not feel welcome.
Absolutely.
There may not be resources there where they believe it is a comfortable environment. And so that's what we don't get. People don't understand that you go to many of these institutions, they are white enclaves. And there are things that are at these institutions that do not actually appeal to black people.
Absolutely.
It's a reality. We listen to different stuff. We dance different. White folks on the 1 and 3, black people on the 2 and 4. Again, I know people like to act like it's not a reality. When we talk about culture, there are just simple differences. White people love pumpkin pie. Don't you come to black people with no pumpkin pie.
I love pumpkin pie now.
Huh?
I love pumpkin pie.
You are a black aberration.
Well, hey.
If you brought some pumpkin pie to Thanksgiving, you getting your ass cussed out.
I might. But
Anybody black in my line, if she brought some pumpkin pie to the crib, it's about to be a problem. She said sweet potato pie.
I like sweet potato pie too. I like
See, yeah, we know how you grew up. See, okay, I'm just saying. Right, raisin. What do you say? Raisins.
I'm well balanced.
Raisin potato. Again, and see, we joke about. See, we joke about this stuff, but we gotta just be honest about it. You can't be black putting a raisin potato salad.
No, we're not gonna do that.
You getting cussed out. Look, and again, it's how we're raised, it's where we're raised, it's culture, and I can accept the differences, and I'm fine with that. I ain't eating it, but I'm fine with that. Okay, I'm not eating unseasoned chicken. It ain't gonna happen. I need some Tony Chachere's Creole seasoning because my folk from Louisiana. So I'm saying that. So what is required of us is to demand from policymakers, stop penalizing black institutions for your lack of resources over the years, and we must be demanding parity when it comes to funding and allowing them to be able to grow and thrive. And so I spend lots of time. I literally had one of the state senators on the show the other day. We cover those things because the last point I'll make is this here. Understand, most of your HBCUs are public schools.
Right.
Most of your HBCUs are in red states.
Right.
So we hold HBCUs up to be these places of comfort and places where we can be who we are without realizing that there are white Republicans in these states that are controlling the money. And they're holding the money back from Jackson State and from Florida A&M and from Alabama A&M.
Right.
And that's why my man Alvin Chambliss led the legendary lawsuit against Mississippi and their schools. That's why it was a 13-year battle in Maryland over the 4 HBCUs there. That's why I've said in Tennessee there needs to be, and that's why the students have filed a federal lawsuit against the state of Tennessee over the funding of Tennessee State. The same thing needs to happen in North Carolina. There has to be legislation, lawsuits filed, but to the people who don't vote, when you file federal lawsuits, they're going before federal judges. Who appoints federal judges? Presidents. Who confirms federal judges? Senator. 88% of Donald Trump's federal judges were white men.
Yes.
Biden and Harris have appointed more black women to the appellate division than all previous presidents combined. So when people say judges don't matter, I then go, oh, but they do, because those are likely going to be the judges who will rule for the HBCUs, then rule against them.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all so much. This has been an incredible, I won't even say conversation, because I've just kind of gotten lost in it myself. But thank you so much for being here. You've covered some really important topics. And if you would like to have a copy, to get a copy of Mr. Martin's last book, we have some copies across the hall in the Welcome Center, and he will take photos over there too. And so join us across the hall over in the Welcome Center. Thank you again so much.
Thank you guys very much. Thank you.